And we are live. Or as I say with every webinar, I certainly hope we are. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. This is a really exciting opportunity for the Pinsker Centre to be able to bring together scholars from different countries across the Middle East to talk about working together, making a difference on the ground, especially in these exciting times where we see so much activity going on, so much diplomatic activity. I will start by introducing our guests. We have three eminent guests this evening. I will put forward 3 questions prepared by the Pinsker Centre to which they will respond. Please put your questions in the comments section so that we may ask our scholars after we have completed the assigned questions. So to begin, I'll begin by introducing our guests. First, we have Dr. MAJID Al SARRAH, who is a visiting lecturer in public policy and legislation at the American University of Sharjah, who has been previously described as a regional expert in public policy by the London School of Economics. He has served as legal advisor in the field of aviation policy. We also have with us this evening Dr. NAJAT Al SAIED, who is formerly a researcher at the Emirates Centre for Strategic Studies and Research in Abu Dhabi. She holds a PhD in media studies from the University of Westminster. She's a columnist for Itttihad, a daily Arabic language newspaper published in the UAE. And for those of you who follow the work of the Pinsker Centre, our third guest will be a welcome return from our dear friend, Dr. Nir Boms. Nir has been on tours with the Pinsker Centre in 2017 and 2019 with prominent Arab colleagues working to make a difference on the ground, which is what brings all 3 of our eminent guests together this evening. And we are excited to follow Nir's career further from here on out as well. It certainly looks like it's constantly getting more interesting and more exciting. And this is absolutely no exception to that rule. To begin with, I'm going to ask a question to Dr. Majid. I'm going to ask all 3 of you the same question. You'll all get a chance to answer. First question is, what would you like to see achieved in the region 10 years from now as a result of the recent normalization between Israel, United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain?
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank you for having us here, and thank you so much for my fellow colleagues here to participate. And welcome to all the attendees to this webinar. So just to start answering the question, as we all know how the Middle East was for the last period of time. So if you'd ask my own opinion, I would love to see an elimination of extremism amongst all the region. Why? Because we have seen a lot of variation between ideologies, lots of variation between the awareness of the people. So you would find some people from one state to another having different opinions, whether it's following, religious views or following various political views. So we would love to see stability in the region. And how is doing this by maybe raising the awareness of the people. We need to maybe change the ideologies that we have at the moment. We have a lot of people actually are passionate to radical views, which is, I would call it a dilemma in our region. And another important point is the regimes itself. So we have a lot of variation and diversity in terms of regimes in the Middle East. We would love to see, some kind of unification amongst all these regimes in order to work in parallel ways, to be aligned, to have similar objectives, similar, political targets to achieve. The other important aspect, I would say, and maybe some of the countries started it already. Maybe I would talk about the UAE. UAE has declared 2019 as the year of tolerance last year, and came up to propose the new project, which is called the Abrahamic House, or the House of Abraham. So it includes a church, a mosque, and a synagogue. So, it shows a lot of tolerance. It shows a lot of coexistence, a lot of acceptance between people, regardless of their, religious views, race, no parts of discrimination. And you know, this will only happen if we have this collaboration amongst all the states working together, like UAE, Israel, Saudi Arabia as well, Bahrain now, Egypt. Okay, so another important point is the you know, building sustainable and resilient economy. And I believe it's really very significant because if we have some similar unions amongst the world, maybe the EU was one of them. It was established on shared values, on you know, sharing the same objectives, destiny, and so on. Lots of pillars to build collaboration amongst all the countries. So maybe we would love to see something similar amongst all the countries here. And it will definitely help the economy. We have seen how the COVID-19 came along, and nobody has expected it. Some countries were doing okay. Other countries actually lost a lot, and the economy was completely hit and going down. So maybe we need lots of policies and plans, maybe amongst all countries, you know, unified and building, you know, their economy together. It has to be sustainable. It has to be resilient. We never know what's going to happen in the future. Now, it's a trend of COVID-19 in the future. And of course, we don't want to see, now everybody talks about this, we don't want to see lots of conflicts, you know, happening amongst all the countries in the Middle East. If you would ask anybody, how is the Middle East? They would say, okay, lots of anger, lots of lack of engagement, you know, between people, their regimes, you know, creating lots of chaos. Now it could be one of the reasons as well, could be the media that we have here. So we need unified media, and maybe, of course, my colleague, Dr. Najat will elaborate further, but I would add also to this point, having, you know, integrated councils, integrated boards amongst all the people from different countries in the Middle East, sharing same values. We have an example, which is called the Israel Uae Council. It was established, you know, by various people from the UAE, from Israel, well-reputed people, really experienced in business and economy. We need to see something similar, you know, not just between UAE and Israel. We need to see it amongst all the other countries too, including Israel, including UAE. And of course, this will definitely give us a lot of, you know, enhancement in our economy. And lastly, we need to, again, maybe I would like to go to the first point. We need to have a major shift in terms of ideologies, termination of any kinds of discrimination or extremism.
Thank you very much for that. Dr. Najat, would you like to comment on what we would like to see as a result of this normalization in 10 years' time? Dr. Najat, you're currently on mute.
The mute. Okay.
There we go.
First of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity, for this invitation, and thank you for the attendees. Yes, I share like all what Dr. Majid said. I couldn't agree with him more. Yes, I want there are many things I want to see in 10 years after this peace treaty, but in order to constrain them, I will put them into points. The first thing that I would like to see more Arab countries and Arab people are convinced that normalization with Israel is the only way for the solution of this long-lasting issue. I believe that will be through changing the educational system and the discourse of the Arab media. Dr. Majid mentioned about the Arab media. I will try to elaborate on it a little bit more. The best thing about normalization that people will see the reality themselves through visiting Israel and dealing with the people there, not through misguided information represented in the media or in textbooks. So here, like I would like to highlight specifically on the Arab media. The Arab media, like, is quite new in the Arab Gulf states mainly. So a lot of people who are dominating the Arab media in the Arab Gulf states are actually coming from countries with certain ideologies. So, and that I believe Dr. Majid agrees with me in that point. And we are like quite new in that field. Now we are like more getting into that field, and we want to put our own school of thoughts in the Arab media. We're still in the very beginning. Even though, you know, usually the Western world and the outside world, when they talk about the Arab world, they talk about it as an organic whole, as they lump us all as one, while we are so diverse. There's a big difference between the mentality of the Arab Gulf states and the people there, and between, for example, people like the Levant and the other Arab countries. The people in the Gulf, in general, not all of them, but in general, they are more business-minded, and they're very pragmatic. So the way they deal with issues is quite different than the other Arab countries. That's why you see things more done. And this is one of the causes of the stability of the Arab Gulf states, because of the way they run things. It's quite different. The other thing that I would like to see as an outcome, I would like to see demolish of extremist ideologies. I shared definitely what Dr. Majid said in that point. Especially the ones that are embedded in political Islam and Arab nationalism. The advocates of the two ideologies took advantage of the unsolved Israeli-Palestinian conflict to promote their ideologies, to fulfill their political agenda mainly, and their main target is the dominance of the region, not the solution of this conflict. They are taking advantage of this conflict to promote their ideologies in the region. That's why nothing has been solved since 1948. So that's a main problem, and I would like something else to be a substitute. So accordingly, I support this normalization between UAE, Bahrain, and Israel, because first, to prove that warm peace or people-to-people peace is the best way to solve this long-lasting conflict. Second, and most importantly, I believe it's about time that Arab Gulf states, mainly UAE, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia, promote their political doctrine. And their political doctrine, in my point of view, is political pragmatism and patriotical nationalism versus the other outdated ideologies, which are mainly Arab nationalism and Islamism, and political Islamism mainly. The third point that I would like to see, the outcome of this normalization that I really would like to see is bipartisan agreement in the West regarding extremism and terrorism, especially regarding political Islamists. Unfortunately, what we see now is a split between the liberals and the conservative in the West, the conservative and the liberal parties, and the Democrat and the Republican Party. Mostly the liberal parties in the West and the Democrat Party in the US see political Islamists as the Muslim Brotherhood and the Iranian regime as moderate, while others see them as terrorists. For example, the Arab Gulf states see those political Islamists, mainly the Arab, when I say the Arab Gulf states, mainly UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain, see political Islamists as terrorists, while liberal parties and leftist parties in the West see them as moderate. But this is the main tremendous difference, and it is actually an obstacle against peace, because if I see those people as extremists and terrorists, and you see them as moderate, so how we can promote peace? The other thing, you know, the Arab Gulf states and also some conservative parties and the Republican Party in the US share the same ideas, that the political Islamists, like the Muslim Brotherhood and the Iranian regime, is a gateway to extremism. And they are like, and basically Daesh and Al-Qaeda, their ideologies are driven from the Muslim Brotherhood and political Islamists like the Iranian regime. It's not like the other way around. So how come you see them as moderate? This is a big problem, especially those people are against peace, are against normalization. But the problem, because they are mostly multilingual and they are hypocrites, they talk very moderately and openly to the West, while they show their true faces to the region. So a lot of Westerners get deceived by them. They think that, yes, they are moderate, they are liberal. So why the countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Bahrain are against them? So what they are trying to promote to the West, look, they are against us because they are against democracy. This is the misinformation. While they are against peace, they are against Israel, but they don't say that, frankly, to the West. They show another face. So we have, in order, if we want to be serious about peace and more normalization with other Arab countries, we have to kill the ideologies. And when you want to kill the ideology, you have to look for the source. And don't get misguided by people who are double-faced. So these are the main things that I would like to see in 10 years.
Thank you very much for your answer. And the final word on this specific topic, I pass you over to Dr. Nirvan.
Thank you very much, Ben. Let me try to use the time to sort of zoom out a little bit and perhaps frame it more conceptually or philosophically. Obviously, I agree with the specifics and the hopes are really of trying to create a more peaceful region. But let me perhaps speak on one thing that Dr. Najat said about ideology and frame it perhaps this way. And understand, what is this normalization word about? And for some of that, we were speaking about the new Middle East as a young student and as a teenager following Shimon Peres, our late president, who wrote a book in this name and began to bring some of these ideas. But what is this idea of normalization? And I think if I were to try to frame it of what is normal, of trying to be normal, I mean, part of it, I think, is the post-ideological era. The Middle East has been infested with ideologies. We are speaking about countries and nations that certainly in the 20th century existed because of ideology. They were somewhat revolutionary. The revolutionary state of Libya or Syria, and the same applies for Yemen in some degree of a failed state. And we, I think, have seen nationalism, pan-Islamism, pan-Arabism, all of that has been a part of the Middle East. In many ways, what we now need to do is move a little bit beyond. The idea of perhaps the new world that we seek to see is a Middle East that moves a little bit beyond the notion of ideology in this sense. And the normalization is about accepting each other as we are. The normalization is about the idea of accepting a person, a nation, a people for who they are, giving them the respect and the ability to live the way they wish to live next to us, by our side. And by doing that, giving each other space, I think it's very much connected to the new generation of the Middle East and to the me generation. I think it's very much connected to the idea of me. This is the iCloud generation. This is the iPhone generation. This is not so much the we generation. And therefore, that's, I think, the vision of the new Middle East.
Thank you very much for that, Nir. I've stratted the questions and answers so as that you will all answer one question first, middle, and last. So for the second question, I would like Dr. Najat to be the first to answer. And the question is, what can the governments of Bahrain and the UAE do to assist in the normalization of ties between Israelis, Emiratis, Bahrainis, and other peoples in the region?
What they can do?
Yeah.
First of all, the fact that they were courageous enough to do it, this is, to me, as a great start, as a start, because when they did it, they know that there are a lot who are against it. They know that very well. But the fact that you are one of the first who did it, that's a big step. I call it one of the first, honestly, with all my respect to the other peace treaties that happened, because in my point of view, the previous peace treaties, I won't call them a true peace treaty. I call them no war treaties, because the true peace treaty is the warm peace treaty. It's like basically people to people. I couldn't expect, I won't say this is a peace treaty if I don't see people visiting Israel, going there, mingling with people. This is when I see this is the true peace. The fact that UAE did it and Bahrain did it, this is a great step. And the other thing that I really admire about UAE, because I'm here, I can tell you more than Bahrain, the people here are so pragmatic. And what I really like and what distinguishes them from other Arab countries, they do more than they talk. So like you see that the peace treaty has been signed only on September 15. And look what happened. Look at the many business deals that happened, like in tourism, in flights, in technology, telecommunications, and health. Look what happened only in this short period of time. Like, and there are a lot of like even merge between the Israelis and the Emiratis, like what happened like in the Israeli business and UAE Business Council and other groups that happened. The social media groups that happened also bring people together. So it is business, it is people to people, and also it is science, because they are dealing with the health cooperation, with science and technology. So I believe in order to promote that to the others, be just a role model. That's what you have to do. If you prove to the others that your way is the successful way, a lot of people will follow you without many talks. Okay, because here you're giving an example. And UAE, you know, from its very beginning, they didn't talk like look at us, but a lot of countries copied what UAE, or like admired UAE to the extent that they admire them to follow their same path, because they see to them a true model. They didn't say that we are the greatest and we are the most wonderful. People come visit UAE and see an excellent example in front of them in all the fields. Now they are seeing the people, when this gets successful, people like see. Now we can see they are successful. There are a lot of business deals. Now UAE, instead of just becoming aloof from this conflict, now they are playing a really dominant role and bringing the Palestinians and Israelis together. Because a lot of media professionals in the West keep complaining, like in the mainstream media, how come there is like a peace treaty between two countries without the Palestinians being involved? Well, there are many kinds of peace. I will establish this peace, and I will be a good example, and I can play a really dominant role and the vital role to bring the Israelis and the Palestinians together, instead of just watching what the Palestinians will be doing. Maybe that round way can be more successful than the direct way. There are many ways for making this treaty successful and making and solving the conflict between the Israelis and Palestinians. And we want to finish from this because we want to go forward. And I believe Bahrain and UAE did a great job by stepping forward.
Thank you very much for your answer. In line with our stratified who answers next, it next comes to Dr. Nir. Dr. Nir, what can governments do to encourage the relationship, making sure that this is not just a short-term relationship, that this is actually a game changer?
Well, one thing, again, following up on Dr. Najat, is trying to find the path to the Palestinians as well. The Palestinian issue is still alive. I am thrilled, and I think all of us are thrilled at what had happened. But even if you take the entire population of the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, including all the residents there and all those who support it, you still get a fraction of the Arab world and even a tinier fraction of the Muslim world. We are very much aware that we still have a lot of work to do. And we're still very much aware, and this I say to you as an Israeli, that we have also responsibility to continue in doing more to deal with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. For that, we also need a change of heart and approach when it comes to the Palestinian side. I very much hope, and some of the discussion I had with my Palestinian colleagues is, again, what do they think about this idea of normalization? This basic, simple idea of trying to accept the other where they are. We need to accept the Palestinians. I think that many of us have done this. The Palestinians need to accept us where we are and to say, look, let's follow in the same idea, because soon enough we can have a win-win. We are doing this because we realize there is a win-win. We're also doing this because we realize that if we're not going to do this, the losing part is radicalization, extremism. We've seen a decade of this in the Middle East just in the last few years, so we understand it very well. I think the governments, and certainly it applies to Europe, needs to understand that. It needs to encourage that. It needs to do what they can to push it further. This is an issue that perhaps we can discuss further. This is not something which is just an American-Israeli push, as I've heard some Europeans say. is something that was cooked for over a decade, 2 decades in the Middle East, saying that we need to change the course of action. The government needs to understand this and try to push toward this direction, and hopefully also do what they can to bring other parties who are now very much against it, and to show them that this can be a win-win for them as well, and we're starting with the Palestinians.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nir. And that brings us to Dr. Majid. Your comment, please, on what governments can do to encourage the relationship and normalization move. Dr. Majid, you're on mute.
I'm so sorry. Thank you so much, Ben. So basically, following what my colleagues say, if you would allow me to go to the first point again, awareness. I mean, it's really important. It's really very significant for the people to understand. I believe now in the beginning, they should be creating proper communication channels between, you know, and if you'd allow me, it's not just UAE, not just Bahrain, it's also UAE, Bahrain, and Israel. Everything has to be integrated. It has to be in line, educating people, you know, after a lot of media misconceptions, lots of media misleading, you know. People need to know what is the real Israel, and what are the real Arabs are, you know. So basically, who are Emiratis, who are Bahrainis, who are Israelis? So these questions are really being frequently asked, and I believe there should be proper communication, systematic approach, you know, to educate people about all of these. On the other hand, we need to again include the Palestinian party here. It's really very important, because the majority of the Palestinians, if you'd ask me, on social media or maybe on any other platform, you know, they would be just following their, with all due respect, you know, their old school mentality leadership, you know, who says, no, do not normalize with Israel. Whoever normalizes or makes peace, you know, with Israel is a traitor. These words should be terminated. It's not about, I mean, first of all, legally, it's a sovereign right for any country to make peace with any other party, which is considered as a state. So in the first place, that would be maybe a really very good start point. I mean, let's talk. Create the proper channels and make people meet each other, talk with each other, and of course with manners. And maybe you can start with scholars, intellectuals, you know, or universities, you know, that would be a great start. And maybe the second part is enhancing tourism. I would really encourage, you know, countries to enhance tourism between these three countries. We have seen videos of the Emirati delegates, you know, who actually was who were in Israel, and people, I've seen videos and they were like, wow, you know, this is something really new and it's very exciting. They have spread this video all over the social media, and everybody is so excited. And you know, the reactions of the people, they're like, yes, we need to go there. We need to discover what is so special about Israel. And believe it or not, you know, nobody expected to see such improvements. And Israel is a very advanced country, you know, lots of technologies, lots of great environments, things to see. And believe it or not, because seeing lots of media misleading pictures, videos about that region, people were not expecting to see Israel in this appearance. So everybody's so excited now to go and visit. So, and maybe the initiative, it has been done already, which is visa-free entry, you know, between UAE and Israel. And I believe this is a great approach to build bridges, you know, between people. On the other hand, we have seen lots of statements, you know, from the UAE government, where they actually stated, yes, we made peace, we normalized with Israel. However, we did not forget Palestine, okay? So Palestinian people, you will be supported, you will be getting whatever you need, you know, in order to fulfill their objectives as well. So I believe maybe one more thing is facilitation. Okay, so as we know, lots of Emiratis are investors, businessmen, and it's the same situation in Israel and Bahrain too. So everybody wants to invest, and maybe just following my colleagues' statements about what happened about the agreement that everybody wants to invest, everybody wants to make some kind of collaborated business and so on. So there should be a lot of facilitations in terms of business, economy opportunities, aviation, tax-free initiatives in order to enhance investments. The other thing, there should be a proper policy, and this policy should be done not just from one country, from a state, from the 3 states, Bahrain, Israel, and UAE, in order to, I will maybe add to Dr. Najat's point, to set a model. I mean, the Abrahamic Accord should be it is a unique model. It should be taught in universities, it should be taught in schools. And I believe this is a great opportunity, to educate the young ones, especially students at schools, universities, that this is the new Middle East, and this Abrahamic Accord, changed history. And in my humble opinion, this will create another mindset for people to communicate and have better, peaceful Middle East.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Majid. I'm just going to take this juncture to let our students know that now is the time to start asking questions. We have our final question from the Pinsker Centre. Thereafter, we will go to the floor. This time, Dr. Nir will be the first one to answer the question. And the question is, what was the impact of Obama's foreign policy on Arab-Israeli relations? And what do you predict will happen if the Iran deal is reinstated under a Biden presidency? Dr. Nir.
I think that the broad impact of the Obama years that were perhaps slightly moderated now had to do with the American retreat from the Middle East. And that, the Iran policy had something to do with it as well. I think had taught some of us and some of the allies who eventually came together that this is not a time to wait for the United States to call the shots or to save us, that we have to do it ourselves. President Trump has not made a significant difference in the broader picture. Certainly he was tougher on Iran and he's tougher on other elements of it, but he's also saying that this is not for the US to really lead. I think the difference between leading from behind and making America great again is also about, we're focusing inwards, not outwards. And it actually, I think, gave us a lesson, us in the Middle East, that if we want to move forward, we need to move ourselves. And I think this is has a lot to do with what you're seeing there. Of course, Iran is a major issue of concern. You see it in all the ASDA surveys. This is something that is not an Israeli concern, it's a regional concern. And there's certainly a concern that a different policy toward Iran will allow Iran to do more of what it is doing, which is terrorism and proxy wars and militias, which is not very positive for our agenda at all. And therefore, I think part of that was an impetus to try to do whatever we can now. That may explain a little bit of the timing of the Abraham Accords.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nir. Now, in tune with our stratified system, Dr. Majid, I call on you again to answer the same question. What would be the impact of a Biden presidency re-endorsing the JCPOA?
So basically, I would say maybe it's really adding to Dr. Nir's points, and maybe adding to Dr. Najat's too about the difference between Democrats and Republicans. Now, I remember when Obama was the president, I mean, he was working towards having a diplomatic solution with Iran. However, it's if you would ask me, it's kind of really hard to have a diplomatic solution at this moment. We have not seen real goodwill and intentions from the regime. Lots of policy failures have been taking place in the past, And maybe it's really hard to guarantee a peaceful nuclear usage, by the Iranian regime. So now we have seen in the past few days that Obama is strictly supporting Biden in his presidency race, and I'm assuming maybe Joe Biden is extremely going to carry on the old policies of Obama, and we might actually see a return of the Iranian deal, between the U.S. and Iran. However, it's really obvious and it's really known to the international society to see how the Iranian regime's wills are not really balanced. And maybe I would recall a say by His Highness, Prince Mohammed bin Salman from KSA, when he said it's really hard to to have a deal with a system, with a regime that was based on radical Islam, on revolutionary concepts, now negative ones, of course, and now they're supporting lots of ideologies to promote radicalism, and it's really dangerous, not just for us, for the region. We have seen a lot of missiles being shot from Yemen and towards Saudi Arabia, and all the experts confirm that these missiles coming from the Iranian regime. Look at the chaos in Syria, in Hamas, and so on. So basically, I don't see really good wills. However, unfortunately, I could maybe anticipate that Biden is definitely going to carry on the old policies of Obama. I didn't see anything new presented, other than taking America back to what Obama's era was. So this is my opinion about this matter.
Thank you very much, Dr. Majid. And now we bring us to Dr. Najat. The same question: what would be the result of Obama policies being adopted by Joe Biden? How would that look for the next 4 years in the Middle East?
First of all, I share exactly the same points of my colleagues, in that term, and to speak, honestly, I haven't agreed with anything of the Obama's foreign policy. I don't want to exaggerate here. This is my own opinion. I see the worst foreign policy in American history, especially the ones related to the Middle East, regarding the chaos that happened, of its support of the Islamists, the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Iranian regime. The only advantage that I see out of that foreign policy, that the people saw themselves. What does it mean when Islamists are in power? They saw that in Egypt, they saw it in other countries. Like, those people do not know anything about how to run a country in terms of economy, in terms of education. All what they want to do is basically control the people ideologically and promote their ideas. And I see that Biden, since he was the VP of Obama, definitely he will run the same foreign policy. And I follow all his speeches and his declarations. I won't see any kind of difference of the Obama's foreign policy and Biden's foreign policy. And regarding reinstating the Iranian deal, if that happens without any modification, and without the existence of the countries that are harmed by the Iranian policies, as Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and UAE, I see the outcome will be disastrous. We saw it already. What happened to the billions of dollars that were given to the Iranian regime after signing this deal? Did the Iranian regime invest this money in Iran or to the Iranian people? They invested it into their armed militias, and they increased their dominance in the region. They increased their dominance in Yemen, in Iraq, in Lebanon. And we see the missiles are coming to our borders in Saudi Arabia. So they didn't invest this money for development, but for destruction. I want to highlight here the main difference of the West, especially between the Democrat and the Republican or the liberal parties in Europe. They only constrain the danger of Iran, and they are afraid only of creating the bomb, the nuclear bomb. While what we see here in the region, that the main danger of the Iranian regime, of its proxy wars, and of its this funding of armed militias. And and the main problem, the main danger, that the Iranian regime, and here I don't say Iran, because I'm not against Iran itself as a country, but against the Iranian regime. Unfortunately, this regime doesn't believe in the concept of statehood, and it doesn't deal with governments, and doesn't deal with states. It deals with militias and with parties. And accordingly, how we can trust any deal with the Iranian regime, since its action is driven out of this mentality? How we can trust it, since this country, this regime doesn't believe in statehood, doesn't believe in dealing with governments? How can I trust any deal with it? Because they can basically sign the deal and then make the opposite, because they are thinking in a militia mentality, not government to government, not state to state. That's the core problem. The core problem since 1979, this regime didn't get transformed from a revolution to statehood. Its mentality is revolutionary. That's the main problem. That's why I support Mr. Trump in his pressure to the Iranian regime, and the fact that he said many times we have to change the behavior. Without changing this behavior, how we can trust any deal with it? Because it will run and go, and the danger will be so harmful. You're signing a deal with the regime, and will they abide by the rules of this deal? And I totally agree with Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed when he said, how come you sign such deal without our existence? We are here, the neighbors of Iran. How come you sign a deal secretly without the existence of UAE, of Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, all the countries that are affected by the Iranian policies? Those people are like funding militias. Those people are creating chaos and instability. Whenever they see any opposition groups in the country, they go and fund them to rebel against their own regimes. They're sending missiles. You saw what happened on the Hormuz Strait. So they are not the problem. I don't care about Iran, if it is democracy or not, how it deals with its people. This is internal issues. I don't care about that. What I care, I want it to be a country. I want it to respect, to act as a government, to act as a statehood. They haven't reached to that point since 1979. They are still thinking in this revolutionary way. They haven't get transformed. That's why I don't trust any deal with this regime before it changes its behavior. That's the main thing. So forget about now the nuclear deal. How we can trust any deal with this regime. Let us see that it really changes its behavior. It stopped funding militias in neighboring countries like Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, and then after that we talk about deals. And since it's still thinking in this armed militia mentality, how we can trust any deal with it? And unfortunately, I see if Biden wins, he won't change anything. He will continue what happened, and more chaos and more danger will happen. And forget it about the peace. We saw how the Iranian regime attacked UAE when it signed this peace treaty. Is that the behavior of a respectful government or respectful country? Why you are attacking another country? This country didn't interfere in your own issues. So why you keep threatening those countries that signed the peace treaty? It's none of your business. They didn't force you to sign the same kind of peace treaty. That shows you what kind of mentality they're still under, this militia and armed and revolutionary way of thinking. This is the danger. This is the main danger. And unfortunately, a lot of Western parties couldn't see it until now. And I believe they have to know that, and they have to see it themselves. Because as I said before, if there's no bipartisan agreement in this critical issue, we will not see stability, we will not see peace, and definitely we will not see more normalization, because we will be so preoccupied with instability, with proxy wars, and with all of these problems.
Thank you very much, Dr. Najat. We now have questions from our students. We have one student with us here, it's Ellie from the University of Cambridge, asks, whilst there's been hope for peace coming about with Sunni Arab Gulf nations in Israel, is there any hope for the Shiite crescent, or is it the only option war at this rate? And I will pass this question on to Dr. Majid. Is the only option for the Shia world war?
Can you repeat it again?
The question in its entirety, so I'm not getting it wrong. Whilst there is, where has been great hope for peace between Israel and the Arab Sunni world, is there any hope for peace between Israel and a Shia country, do you think?
Yes, thank you so much. It's a very important question, by the way. And I would go back to the main concepts, okay? Again, we're very tolerant, you know, we believe in coexistence. And, but the only problem is the majority of the Shia, you know, they wouldn't be taking their directions. They wouldn't be embracing peace unless there was a word from the high priest in Iran, okay, or high imam. So so basically, maybe my colleague Dr. Najat just mentioned now that this regime actually was fully attacking UAE, attacking Bahrain, attacking any regime who would definitely normalize with Israel. So basically, maybe if any of the Shia, okay, following their countries' national directions and policies, then I would definitely believe that there will be a normalization. Otherwise, if the Shia following the high imam, okay, or the chief imam of Iran, I don't believe there is a chance. The main issue is with the regime, okay? Iranian regime is leading the Shia people, you know, to in terms of making decisions, making directions, and setting policies. And you know, I have seen a lot of Shia people that would say, no, we will definitely follow our country. Like, for example, if any person from this sect would say, no, I belong to this country, I consider myself as a national of this country, and I'm following my country's approach, then it's normal. Otherwise, if the loyalty goes to the high priest or high imam, now this is another issue. And maybe, like Dr. Najat mentioned, they have been promoting radicalism and extremism throughout, you know, religious channels and religious approaches. So the main difference is whether they just follow you know, the high priest in Iran, or they follow their country.
Thank you, Dr. Majid. We've had a question for Dr. Nir. This question comes from Elliot from the University College of London. Elliot asks, when will Saudi Arabia join this normalization, and do you expect that they would face domestic opposition should they choose to do so?
Well, let me just add one thing, and perhaps at this point contradict my colleague. I see hope in other places. I certainly see hopes also with the Shia world. And if we're looking at even the recent history, you know, Shiism, much had happened with Shiism all throughout the last millennia. Sufis developed for the most part from Shiism, the Druze, the Baha'is, and Israel had peaceful relationship and very warm relationship with Iran until 1979. Israel still has very warm relationship with Azerbaijan, another Shia state for the most part. All of that means that, yes, this is really, it comes from the supreme leader and the Iranian leadership, but the Iranian people, with many of them, and civic society relations still very much exist. Saudi Arabia is a larger player, a more important player really in the Middle East, and it needs to follow its own flute. I think the Saudis, whatever they will do carefully. I think they were very much consulted on this process, and in some ways we've seen their endorsement, not just in the terms of not objecting it or releasing a number of public statements, which they did, but also doing moves for normalization, including the airspace, the flights, and moving in this direction. I think Saudi Arabia needs to take its time, and I think my colleague who knows much more about the politics of Saudi Arabia, and Dr. Najat, may be able to add something to that. I very much hope that the train that have left the station will continue to drive, because I think what this means, it's not really about whether the Saudis will join another peace accord with Israel. It's really about the realignment of the region between pragmatists and between radicals. One of my colleagues a few days ago, I heard him say this is between the old Middle East and the modern East, about creating something that is really a vision of a future. And I think Saudi began a process realizing that if it's not going to create a different vision for the future, for its own young people, 70% of the region are under the age of 30, then the alternative is a radical vision. And that's an alternative that is far more dangerous to the Saudis, to the region, and I would say even more dangerous than Iran itself.
Thank you very much. The next question is actually directed to Dr. Najat, so that's a great segue. We have a question from Benjamin Brent from IDC Herzliya School of Government. He asks Dr. Najat about the news coverage regarding Israel and whether there has been a noticeable shift in the way that Israel is portrayed in the Arab world leading up to the peace accords, and how the public has reacted if there has been any change in the way Israel has been reported about.
Okay, this is a really great question. Thank you for asking this question. But let me just talk about the previous question regarding the Shiism. We have a good example. The Azerbaijan, for example, currently has strong ties with Israel. And this is one of the main reasons why Iran is fighting it, because of its relationship with Israel. The problem, we are not, as I said, the problem is not with Iran as a country or as Shiism in general. The problem with the Iranian regime, and they are fighting any liberal Shiites who are against their ideology. This is one of the things that I want to highlight. That's why they are fighting most of the liberals in Iraq, most of the Shiite liberal in Lebanon, and we see how they are siding with Armenia against Azerbaijan, not because they are tolerant towards Christians, but because they are against the liberal Shiites and the national Shiites in Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is consisted of more than 70% Shia, and their sect is exactly the same as Iran, but they are against them because of their liberalism, their secularism and nationalism, and they don't want this kind of Shiite model to be promoted to the Shiite world. That's why they are. This is one of the main reason they are fighting it. Regarding his question about the media, the Arab media did a horrible job of promoting hostility. And I wrote a lot about it. The problem, as I said, our Arab media, even in the Arab Gulf states that are owned by the Arab Gulf states, they are dominated by Arab professionals who are coming from certain ideologies who are different totally than the mentality of the Arab Gulf states. That's why if you make any study or you make any survey and ask about to what extent the Arab Gulf people satisfied with their media, most of them will be saying we're not satisfied. The Arab media is not representing us. And you know, I always say, okay, at least when you show the side of the Palestinian, show the other side. So show the other side of the Israelis. That never happened, or very, very few times happened. And the other thing, for example, when I was doing a research, I noticed that a lot of Palestinians are against the Palestinian leadership, the PLO, the authority. But that is never shown in the Arab media. They never showed it. So the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is only shown from one angle, and this is the problem. They're not even showing the whole concept. Even the Palestinians, they're not showing all the Palestinians' opinions. And I wrote that in many articles about that. The other thing that is also, and I wrote about it also, that is also playing a big role in increasing the hostility in the Arab media, the Arab drama and Arab movies. And when you say Arab drama and Arab movies, mostly it is Egyptian movies. because a lot, fewer countries in the Arab world produce movies and drama. The main country that is producing that is dominating the Arab world is Egypt, and most of their movies about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is completely biased, and it's increasing a lot of hostility. Like I'm sure that for Dr. Majid knows about Ra'fat Al-Hajjan drama serial. This drama serial, it's composed, I guess, of 30 episodes. It really had a huge impact, not only in Egypt, even in Saudi Arabia. I saw that myself. I saw that, it demonized the Israelis. It makes them, whenever you see the Israeli, it makes you think that those people are enemies, are like devils. Even when they say like nice words, they mean the opposite. All of that was embedded in the drama serials and the movies. And believe me, the movies have even more impact than even the news stations. Because like the people who are in the middle age or the younger, the teenager, won't be watching news channels as when they watch all of these programs and the movies. So yes, we need to change all of that. We need to change all of that, because we couldn't talk about peace and normalization while our media is promoting the opposite. A good example that happened last year in Ramadan, and I'm sure that Dr. Majid even knows about it, the Harun drama serial, and we saw the backlash that happened. How come you are now, is that an open door for normalization? You're trying to portray the Jews as nice people. Well, this is a historical drama. We were like just saying the facts about what happened in Kuwait and Bahrain and the other girls. Those are Arab Jews. So, but still, because the people are not used to even to portray the Jews in a neutral way, not only in a supportive way. And also we saw political comedy shows in Saudi Arabia about like people are fed up of the Palestinian leadership, and they're talking about their ingratitude in a very comic way. Also, this made a very big backlash last Ramadan. So, but we saw a lot of people who are supportive of this. So that means that the people want to see another discourse in the media. They're open about that, especially the people in the Arab Gulf. They're fed up of this kind one narrow way of showing the whole issue. They want to see the actual facts. And a lot of people were supportive of this political comedy show. They were like, so they said, yes, we have to be more realistic about that. We have to say the truth. Why we are hiding the truth only because to support certain people because they are from our same race and religion? But we have to say the truth no matter what, because that will not help the issue and will not help the Palestinians, and with backlash on ourselves. So you can see the change, but we have to work more and more and more. And I even talked about that yesterday in a meeting. I said, we in the Arab Gulf state, in order to promote our ideologies or our doctrine, I will call it, as political pragmatism and also patriotic nationalism, we have to create our own thought of school, and mainly for the media. So that means whenever you want to go and be hired in my media station, call it Sky News Arabiya, call it Al Arabiya channel. If you're coming from Egypt, from Lebanon, from Syria, from Iraq, you have to be graduated from this academy of thought, which is my own political way of thought, and then you go and present. I won't accept somebody who's working in my station and is against me, against my own political agenda. They have to be also convinced, because there's a big difference when an announcer read the news like this carelessly and doesn't believe in what he's saying, and then when someone really believes in it. He's a graduate of my school of thought. That's what we need to do here in the Arab Gulf states. We have to create this academy, media academy. It's basically school of thought, not only to teach the technical way of media, how to present, no, what to think, what you should be thinking. Think practically. We used this ideological way of thinking for many years, but it didn't work out. We used the Nasserism, Arab nationalism, political Islamism, but it backfired of our thought. Okay, now it's your turn to see my own way of thought, to see my own way of thinking, to see my school of thought. We haven't reached to that point to that point yet. We have to really reach to this point, especially in the media, because this is how you're gonna be influencing the whole nation, and with different age group and with different educational background. This is what I see that should be done in the media sector.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Najat. And that is all we have time for. We've had 3 questions from the Pinsker Centre. We've had 3 questions from our students across the United Kingdom. And we are really, really grateful that the 3 of you have made the time to come and join us and share your wisdom. This seems like a conversation that is not going anywhere. There is a lot of work ahead of us. More work, you could say, than is even behind us. We have a lot of work to be done. Thank you very, very much to all of our guests who've joined us. We apologize to those who asked questions and we were not able to reach you, especially to those who weren't students. We must, of course, prioritize our student audience, but thank you for joining us regardless. To Dr. Nir, Dr. Majid, Dr. Najat, thank you so much for your time. We're very, very grateful, and we hope to see all 3 of you again soon, hopefully this time in the United Kingdom at the universities on tour. And to those of you who are watching, please make sure you follow our content on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all other social media channels for more conversations like this one. We aim, as Dr. Nir aims and as Dr. Majid and Dr. Najat aims, to bring together cultures, to have these important discussions to make a real difference. Thank you very, very much for joining us this evening. We wish you a wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.